Tim, do you want a word?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks very much for talking to us.
That's quite all right. That's great stuff.
And sorry to take you by surprise a little bit there. It took me by surprise as well, to be honest. Couple of questions about Banter.
Yeah.
These are, I mean, Simon, Nina, Mark and yourself, these are some big names in folk, and I'm going to say this very politely, some veteran names in folk.
Yes.
So why is it that you didn't form together until 2017?
Well, Nina and I, we started off playing with a chap called Liam Robinson. Liam Robinson Dance Band. We did quite a number of gigs at Sidmouth and various folk festivals all over the place. I'd known Liam for a little while because he's also from Lincolnshire, same as myself. And Nina had ended up in the band with us through depping in one day, and then it's this is amazing. The connection, the musical connection is fantastic. But then Liam sadly fell ill. But Nina and I had got a whole string of bookings that we had to fulfil, and we had this crazy all-night session at Chippenham Folk Festival at the Buttercross with Simon, and had really musically clicked with him. We tried out a few other people, but at our first official gig together, which is a very strange one because it was at the Atomic Weapons establishment for somebody's leaving do. I mean,
natural place for folk music.
To start. It was Kaylee, and and on the way home, Simon said, "So what are we calling this band?" And that was it. We thrashed it about for a while, and he said, "Well, why not Banter?" Well, why not? Because we were all taking the mickey out of each other.
Because that's what you were doing. Okay, fair enough.
And then Mark joined a little bit later on. In fact, only about a year and a half ago. Once we got through 3 albums, we were wanting to sort of put some other musical stuff into what we were doing.
Now, what are these lucky people in the auditorium tonight going to expect? I've heard you described as the biggest small band in the world.
Yeah. Biggest small band or smallest big band?
Possibly. Well, you can edit me as we go along.
That's all right. Well, Simon is probably the de facto player of English traditional music on the melodeon, and he's got a fantastic heritage and history in what he's playing.
He's got a lot of producing form as well, I think, hasn't he?
Yeah, as well. Played with the Albion band, the Albion Christmas band. He gigs with Simon Nicol and Ashley Hutchins and Kelly Weil, but also Edward II as well. The reggae folk fusion band as well. He's been playing with them for about 30 years, and they used to do loads and loads of stuff for the British Council. They used to gig all over the world. They got some great stories about sort of being in the rainforest in the Amazon and in the deep snow in Canada and all this sort of stuff. And so he's
a little bit different from South Devon.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah. Not judging by the weather a couple of days ago.
I know.
But anyway, so we've got Simon in the band. Nina, she's ever since she was a toddler, she's been going to folk festivals. Whitby is her home festival, if you will. But she's more from the folk dance and folk sessions, tunes side of things. I'd not really heard much about folk song until she came across my folk song, my book of collection of books. At which point she was going through and finding all these amazing lyrics that she said, does anybody know this one? Does anybody know this? You know, things like The Unquiet Grave and things like A Waily Waily and some of the Copper Family repertoire. But she found the lyrics, but she didn't know what the original songs were like. So I was biting my tongue, trying not to influence her in any way as to what the shape or form of her new music for each of these was going to be like. And so she was coming out with these great new versions. And it was so reminiscent of things like what Maddie Pryor was doing, what Martin Carthy was doing in the 60s and 70s.
I think Maddie Pryor's going to be here later in the week, isn't she?
Fabulous, yeah. Oh, yeah. One of our absolute heroes, Maddie.
Of course.
So she, but Nina was right, taking all these sets of lyrics and putting this amazing music to them, much in the same way that the creativeness and sort of filling in the blanks sort of thing was happening with the last great folk revival.
I was here a little earlier on when we were doing sound checks and accidentally on purpose heard a little bit of the playlist accidentally on purpose. You're more aware than most people about quite how vast the field, how vast the material is.
Yeah.
How on earth do you go about selecting a playlist for for relatively short. It must be so frustrating. Everything you must take out.
Because even if you just look at the 3 albums we've already got recorded, then that's 3 hours worth of material. And then we at the moment we're featuring a lot of the stuff in the sets that we're doing over the summer here at Sidmouth, also at Broadstairs and Whitby and some of the other big festivals, of stuff that we've worked up for the next album, which we're hoping to be recording in September.
So we'll hear a bit of the new stuff tonight?
Definitely, yeah. And sort of previewing it live.
What does Sidmouth mean to you?
It's become pretty much the coming home festival for me, personally. There's so many firsts have happened for me here at Sidmouth. I've played with people like Roger Watson and Jackie Oates at the Bedford, doing some of those really intimate gigs. I've danced with Moulton Morris, the Morris side, for a whole week on a previous year, and I suppose one of the highlights for me personally is that Sidmouth Folk Week, they gave Banter its first late night extra gig as a Ceilidh band, and then its first late night concert gig as a Ceilidh band up at the Bulverton. And the highlight of that for me is I do this mad spoon solo at the end of this piece called Rattling Bog, or Rare Bog, and I do the splits, and playing off my legs and my arms, my feet and my head, and at the end of this, I've got this little box in my back pocket. And as I came out of the splits at the end of this solo, and the 500, 600 people there all going crazy, I just dumped the spoons, and Nina looked at me a little oddly, and it was then that I pulled the box out my pocket, dropped down on one knee, opened it up, and proposed to Nina. So.
You are a braver man than me, Tim.
At least you said yes.
I take it that there was a positive response. I'm very glad to say. But that's a dramatic moment. That's a big romantic story. That's such a showbiz story. That's a West End musical right there.
Well, yeah. Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's
how
all yours.
How did the audience react?
They just went bonkers. There was only about 3 people in the entire audience, including Simon on stage with us, who knew I was going to do it. And there's a few fantastic little videos floating around on YouTube and that of the moment.
I don't know what impresses me more, the fact that you did it in such a public place, so you managed to do that while recovering from the splits.
No, neither do I. Nina just buried her face in her hands like this, and she was shaking her head like this, and I was worried. I was so worried. Is she going to say yes? Is she going to say no? But I'd got a backup plan, because the following night we were doing a late night extra Ceilidh. And if she'd said no, I'd have just persisted and just asked her again, just done the same thing.
Wear her down, war of attrition. I'm not going to be person enough to ask how that's going, but I will ask, what's the future for the band? What's the future for Banter?
Future for the band? We've got this amazing additional player called Mark Jolly in the band now, who has got so many musical influences. He is a fiddle player, a singer, a bass player, guitarist, and just super. He just fits. He's a bit bonkers like us as well, and he's getting very much into the whole we take the mickey out of each other sort of vibe to the band. But we've evolved from a Ceilidh band when we started out to a band that is now up there on the concert scene. This is our first Ham concert, and we're absolutely blown away to be asked to do this.
And the Ham really is in folk music. This is, and in Sidmouth, this is pretty much the pinnacle, I guess, isn't it, of live performance?
It is. And, like the late night extras up at the Bulverton, for a Ceilidh band, is like playing on the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury. This is just one of the biggest showcase gigs that you can play in the folk world. What an amazing festival. Always has been, and I think it always will be. You
mentioned that you were from Lincolnshire. By weird coincidence, so am I. And I know BBC Radio Lincoln very well. You want to plug anything?
I do happen to be the presenter, curator, presenter, dog's body, and producer, and everything else, email responder, on Tim Walker's Folk.
That's the BBC gives you a lot of staff, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely, a lot of something. But yeah, every Sunday night at the moment, it's a 3-hour show. It's the only BBC local radio, 3-hour folk show left on the network, and so we're hoping that it will survive what's happening with BBC local radio at the moment.
Well, more generally, I mean, is that a sign that BBC is giving up on folk, or I mean, folk is incredibly popular. It's not as if there's no demand for it. Is it that the BBC just doesn't bother anymore? I'm sorry, I'm putting you in a difficult position because you work for them.
Well, I'm just a freelancer, and whilst I'm officially, in a Gary Lineker way, not supposed to have an opinion on certain things.
Paid that well?
Yeah, played that well. These opinions are mine and not the BBC's. But I think there's, I think there is a little bit of confusion in where things are going at the moment, and I think it's chasing ratings as everybody else. I think something I read in the newspaper or online or something a while back is that the most valuable commodity nowadays, it's not gold, it's not uranium, it's not diamonds, it's not oil, it's people's attention. And everybody is competing for that, because that's where the money flows in, through advertisement and through funding and through supporters. And the BBC is trying to compete for people's time with Spotify, with Netflix, with everything.
With us.
With you, yes. Well, I mean, I know where my attention's going to be, but yeah, that is the commodity that everybody is trying to get hold of. Because if you've got people's attention, then you can try to influence them in some way.
Tim, I know exactly where everybody's attention is going to be this evening. I hope you enjoy it as much as I know everybody out there is going to enjoy it.
We're going to have a fantastic time.
I hope you absolutely love it. I know you will, and thank you so much. And sorry for taking you by surprise. Took me a bit by surprise as well. But thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.